pointing to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the default state of everything that exists, it's submission, Islam to Allah, submission to Allah. And also of tasdeeq, confirming His existence. Everything that exists. Now what happens is, the human being or the jinn, we take ourselves, Allah has created us and given us these bodies and commanded us to worship Him and to call towards Him. We often take ourselves and we commit evil. So we are going against nature. We're going against what Allah created us for. We're going against the heavens and the earth. So imagine the human being, look into the heavens, right? Imagine you as a human being, or imagine any human being. Don't want to call any names, right? But imagine any particular human being, right? And of course, certain names come to mind immediately, and compare that human being and his stature to the stature of the heavens. There's no comparison, that's what we're saying. The beauty and the good and the truth that is represented in the heavens versus this human being and all the evil that he can produce, right? There's no comparison. That person can do a lot of evil, but that evil can never come the great amount of good that is in the cosmos. And the beauty, his ugliness cannot rival the beauty that's in the cosmos, that's in what Allah created. Even though the person may do very, very ugly things, but that person's ugliness, it can never overcome the beauty that we see in the world. Why? Because Allah created things beautiful. And it's us, it's the human being and the jinn as well, that do ugly things. We make ourselves ugly. Allah creates us beautiful, but then we do ugly things. The point is to say here that the good and the bad, or the pure and the impure, can never be equal because of what we just talked about. Allah creates things in a beautiful, pure state. Right? So even though we talk about so much evil in the world, we have to know that the good will predominate and the good will come to dominate over all of the bad. And also that even within ourselves, when we, for example, become better people, what we're really doing is just bringing ourselves back into equilibrium. We're bringing ourselves back into our natural state. We're bringing ourselves back into the fitrah. That's what we're doing. We're just doing ourselves a favor. So basically in this day and age, we're just out of sync with what we're supposed to be doing, what we were created to do. We're just out of sync with what makes us, and with our own beautiful states as Allah creates us upon. We're just out of sync with that. And once we get into sync, we purify ourselves, we start to remember Allah, and we sort of gain a level of understanding of that, increasing in knowledge and increasing in our prayers upon the Prophet, how much we say La ilaha illallah, how much we fast, how much we get up in the night to pray, and so on and so forth. We increase in these things, and then our understanding also starts to increase. And we start to become step by step in tune with who we are supposed to be. And we start to achieve fulfillment. And we start to then live a life worth living, and a life that's really real and substantial, a life of substance, a life that is gratifying. All right, so these are important lessons as we talk about good and evil. Because of course, if we start talking about the evil, sometimes you can't really stop talking about the evil because there's apparently so much of it. But that's just on the surface. So any conversation about good and evil, we have to frame it this way. We have to frame it this way. People often talk about, quote unquote, the problem of evil in the world. Right? We don't have that problem as Muslims. We don't talk about it like this. Right? Because we know at the essence of everything is a goodness that Allah creates in it, and that some beings choose to go against that goodness. Shaitan is the first most amongst these beings that was created to do good things, but then he turned away from Allah. He turned towards doing wretched things, so Allah cursed him. Right? So this is important as we talk about good and evil. In any case, so back to Surah al-Baqarah now. Surah al-Baqarah then effectively allows us to achieve this natural fitri state. It brings us back towards our natural state, that natural state of goodness. It allows us to preserve that, and it keeps the Satans, the abalisa, the devils out of our affairs, and allows us to sort of have a level of focus without those devilish whisperings. So Shaitan, for example, has to leave the house. Shaitan avoids the person who reads Surah al-Baqarah. If shaitan sees that person, just goes the other way, right? So that person is then able to maintain and subsist and also grow in purity. So we subsist, we increase, and we gain in purity, and we purify our fitrah. We even grow in our fitrah. We grow in what Allah created us to be, and we start having what we call tahqiq, which is realization as real believers who are mutahaqqiqeen bil iman, that they are living the reality of iman and what this faith is supposed to be, right? Not just an idea in the head, but something that's lived, that manifests itself on our limbs, on our feet, right? That we start doing things that Allah is pleased with, whether at home, at our work, in the masjid, or outside at the park, whatever that may be. We start doing things that Allah is pleased with. So this is the manifestation of iman, or the tahqiq of iman, the tahqiq of being a real believer, right? So these things, so Surah al-Baqarah, it's a surah that allows this to happen. And one of the primary ways that this happens, as we've been talking about, is that it keeps shaitan out of your affairs. So shaitan has to back off, right? And we know shaitan is the primary deceiver and whisperer, primary distractor, deceiver, deceptor, right? The primary sort of molester, right? And this is what shaitan has chosen to become, subhanallah. We talk about him often because Allah tells us to take him as an enemy.